Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Craig Milkowski, the DRF Race of the Day for Saturday, July the 1st, race number 6 at Belmont Park. We're kicking off a 50-cent pick 5 with the grade 3 Dwyer. It's a one-turn mile for 3-year-olds. Before we take a look at the field, remember that the 4th of July sale is ongoing at shop.drf.com. Get up to 50% off past performances, picks, clock reports, the digital paper, everything you need to win on 4th of July week. Here's the field now for the grade 3 Dwyer. Please click or scan the QR code for Race of the Day access on your mobile devices, which includes free formulator pass performances. And Craig, the number 5 Fort Bragg, 8-5 morning line for Bob Baffert. It's the odd Bob Baffert cheek pieces off, blinkers on move.
I can't say I have a whole lot of stats on cheek pieces on and off, so I did not account for that in the morning line. I did want to bring up there will be no making fun of the morning line on this preview because I was the one who was tasked with making it.
I think you made a good one here, though, because Fort Bragg's coming off an excellent race in the Pat Day Mile, a race in which he just missed by a nose, and he brings really solid figures, whether it's Time Form US or Buyer Speed figures, onto the table. Let's throw up the Time Form US pace projector for this race. Again, it's a one-turn mile, and the Dwyer's an interesting race because it could lead to longer distance starts, maybe in races like the Jim Dandy. I think most of these horses are probably going to be headed, if they're good enough, for a race like the Grade 1 8 Allen Jerkins at Saratoga. And the 2 Saudi Crown is pretty fast.
He is fast. This is one of those cases where I don't have supreme confidence in the pace projector because we show Saudi Crown on the lead, but I do think there's some other speed horses in here, including the one horse Prove Right, who I've drawn the inside is probably going to have to go. The 3 Harrodsburg's another who's tried to go wire to wire in both his career starts. So I'll actually be a little surprised if Saudi Crown has things as easy as the pace projector shows.
I agree with you that the number 1 Prove Right is a potential pace player. This horse has shown a lot of speed in his career, and he's danced a lot of dances for a 3-year-old. Now, he was in the Chick Lang last time out, and he didn't show that early speed, and then he got bothered when a horse unfortunately broke down on the turn. Do you want to give him sort of a mulligan for that race because he didn't utilize his best style, or are you simply going to just look at his overall form and say, listen, he's probably in too tough?
I personally think he's in a little too deep. The one race where he has a speed figure that's competitive, we have it coded in bright red at Time Form US as a really speed favoring track, one where he went wire to wire, drew away to win by 9 lengths. So I view that race as more of an aberration, and he'd have to improve quite a bit, something which seems unlikely to me for a horse making his 17th start.
Now, the number 2 is Saudi Crown. This horse is a perfect 2 for 2 in his career for trainer Brad Cox, and he went gate to wire last time out, and he set a pretty legitimate pace that day and went on about his business to win that first level allowance. Now he's up in class. If the pace projector is correct and Saudi Crown gets a little bit of a breather on the lead, he's somewhat dangerous to stretching out to a one-turn mile.
Oh, sure. I guess you have to view the distance with a little bit of question mark, but given his breeding, it seems like he should be able to get it. His running style, he showed he could read a little bit when he broke his maiden. I do worry about that inside post, though, with speed inside of him and speed outside of him. Like I said, I don't think it's going to be easy, and adding an additional furlong and a half to the furthest he's ever been could prove pretty tough for a horse who's probably going to be a pretty short price in here.
The number 3, Harrodsburg, was a debut winner for trainer Rob Atras, and in his second start, he was bet down to 7-5, and he ran pretty well, although the Time Form US pace figures for this race were color-coded blue. It's a short field. Harrodsburg's on the lead through those reasonable fractions, and he runs well. He just doesn't get the bob.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed after that big debut win. I mean, he was 7-5 this day. He had things his own way on the front end. I think he's one that could challenge for the lead. In his first race, he went quite a bit quicker than he did in that second race. And maybe he just kept horses in the race, but it just seems like it's a step up to me.
He's another one stretching out to a mile. Remember, he was entered in the Woody Stevens along with Fort Bragg. Both were scratched that day. Harrodsburg was a vet scratch. Fort Bragg got sick. Alternate Reality is really hoping for a 4th of July barbecue up front because this horse is coming from the back of the pack as he did in his most recent start, a first level allowance race. Now, this was not a very strong field he was up against. We see him on the outside. He still has a lot of work to do. These pace setters are coming back to him. They went too fast.
They did, and some of the fractions are coded in red in Timeform US. His speed figure was a little bit lighter on that Timeform US scale than the main contenders in here. But if things do get hot up front, which I do think is a possibility, he is certainly one of the ones you have to consider late.
Fort Bragg was one of the Bob Baffert trained horses that was transferred over to Tim Yakteen during the spring. And he ran in the San Felipe, and it was kind of a race where he was one-paced. And after that, they put cheap pieces on. In the Florida Derby, he got very aggressive. He didn't break very well, but there was a giant hole in between horses, and he just shot on through to make a very fast pace. Maybe that distance was a little bit too far. I liked his performance last time out in the Pat Day Mile. He was basically giving ground all the way around the track, and he finished ahead of a horse that came back to run a good third in the Woody Stevens.
I like his draw here. I like his forward progression. Getting back into the Bob Baffert barn, it can never be viewed as a negative. So he's certainly the main contender. I made him the morning line favorite based off that win in the Pat Day Mile. I would understand if some people had some concerns about the figure from that race because it's one where the run backs haven't been all that great. They've been a little bit subpar, not crazy so, but I think his good outside post position and the speed inside sets him up for a great trip.
And completing this field is the number 6, Joey Freshwater, who's going to go turf to dirt for trainer Linda Rice. Now, the last time we saw this horse on dirt, he chased a pretty fast pace and he chased a pretty sharp horse. The winner of that race came back to run an excellent second in the Woody Stevens. This is another horse with a good outside draw, good tactical speed. He doesn't have to come from 100 out of it, and he might be clear of traffic. I still wonder about his overall quality. Is he truly going to be one of these graded stakes horses? Well, he proved it in the Bayshore 3 starts back.
Yeah, I think that's a bit stronger than the Bayshore, but given his draw and the possible pace setup, I wouldn't be surprised if he was able to sneak into the trifecta, maybe even the exacta. He has a little bit better figures than the other horse, Alternate Reality, that might be coming from off the pace. So I could understand people wanting to use him. The jump might be a little too much for me to take him on top, but I expect him to run well.
Jose Ortiz takes the mount for Linda Rice. Before we get to our top selections, please click the subscribe button on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for the latest DRF videos. Top pick time for the Dwyer. We're both going with Fort Bragg. I think this horse has always shown some ability. And as you mentioned, Craig, he has the right running style, I think, for this race. It could get crowded down towards the inside. He drew nicely. And I think if he runs his Pat Day Mile, he's just going to win.
Yeah, that's basically how I was looking at this race. It's one where you kind of maybe want to talk yourself into being clever, but at the end of the day, I'm a speed figure guy, and the 2 horses I picked on top kind of tower over the rest of the field. So I picked Fort Bragg, given that inside draw and the outside draw and the likely good trip.
I'm going with Fort Bragg as well. I'm curious to see if Harrodsburg does well stretching out in distance. That last race, as you mentioned, a little bit disappointing. He didn't get the job done, but the favorite did run him down, and he ran him down by this much. Maybe he can show some improvement in only his 3rd lifetime start. We're going with Fort Bragg in the Saturday DRF race of the day. It's the Grade 3 Dwyer at Belmont. Good luck.